Imagine a monarch so ruthless that half of her kingdom's people perished under her rule. A queen whose idea of justice was forcing suspects to swallow poison and whose notion of loyalty meant death for the disobedient. This is the dark tale of Queen Ranavalona I of Madagascar, often dubbed the world's most murderous woman. Today, we delve into the shocking reign of the cruelest queen in history, a story of power, paranoia, and a massacre that turned an island paradise into a realm of terror. How could one ruler cause so much suffering? And what can we learn from this brutal chapter of history? By the end, you'll discover why Ranavalona's reign, though drenched in blood, carries important lessons about absolute power and resistance. Ranavalona story matters because it shows how fear and isolation can destroy a nation from within. Understanding her reign can positively impact us by highlighting the dangers of tyranny and the value of compassion in leadership. It's a chilling reminder that even in today's world, unchecked power and xenophobia can lead to unimaginable cruelty, a lesson that can inspire us to cherish tolerance and human rights. So let's journey back to 19th century Madagascar and witness how Ranavalona I earned her infamy as the Mad Queen of Madagascar. Ranavalona was never meant to rule, but she seized the throne through intrigue and bloodshed. In 1828, King Radama I of Madagascar died suddenly, with no direct heir. Radama's favorite wife, Ramavo, later known as Ranavalona IV, wasted no time. Some rumored she even poisoned the king to clear her path. What we do know is that after Radama's death, tradition dictated the crown pass to Radama's young nephew, Prince Rakatobe. Ranavalona had other plans. In a swift coup backed by the army, she proclaimed herself queen in August 1828, eliminating any rivals who stood in her way. One of her first acts as queen was to wipe out Rakatobe and his entire family. According to accounts, Ranavalona honored a local taboo against royal bloodshed by ordering these rivals strangled or starved to death instead of outright battle. No mercy was shown. By the time of her coronation in 1829, the new queen had purged the royal court of anyone who could challenge her. The message was clear. Ranavalona's reign would be secured through absolute fear and brutality. Even in mourning her late husband, Ranavalona's cruelty showed its face. During the obligatory mourning period, she allegedly forbade any sign of joy. No singing, no laughter, not even comfortable sleep. Those who failed to publicly weep for the dead king risked being enslaved on the spot. It was an early hint of the paranoia and oppression that would define her 33-year rule. Ranavalona had grabbed power, and now she intended to keep it at any cost. With her throne secure, Queen Ranavalona I turned her focus outward and shut Madagascar off from the outside world. She remembered how European influence had crept in under her husband's reforms. Missionaries, traders, and diplomats from Britain and France were gaining a foothold in Madagascar in the 1820s. To Ranavalona, these outsiders were a threat to her sovereignty and traditional authority. So she acted decisively. From the very outset of her reign, all foreign influence had to go. The queen expelled Christian missionaries, banned local people from practicing Christianity, and strictly controlled any remaining foreign traders. Nearly all Europeans fled Madagascar once her hardline stance became evident. She cut off treaties her husband had made, and even broke trade agreements. By isolating her island kingdom, Ranavalona believed she could protect it from becoming another colony carved up by imperial powers. However, this fierce isolation came at a terrible price for her own people. Ranavalona resurrected the old practice of Fanampawana, forced labor as tax. Instead of paying taxes in money, Malagasy commoners paid with sweat and blood. She made her subjects build her grand palaces, roads through jungles, and to serve in her constant military campaigns. It was essentially slavery under another name. People were worked to death, carrying the queen on lavish journeys, constructing monuments, or fighting in endless wars. Under Ranavalona's iron-fisted policies, Madagascar had become a nation in chains. Life in Madagascar soon earned a grim nickname, the Years of Darkness. Commoners whispered this about Ranavalona's rule because of the misery and death that touched nearly every family. By one account, thousands died each year from overwork, malnutrition, and disease as a result of her demands. Her army's ranks were decimated too. Soldiers sent to subdue distant provinces died by the thousands from combat and tropical diseases. Entire villages were razed under scorched earth tactics to punish rebels, leading to famine in those regions. Ranavalona ruled through fear, and loyalty to the queen became a matter of life or death. Even a hint of disobedience or foreign sympathy could mean imprisonment, enslavement, or execution. Ranavalona II's reign is infamous for its cruelty and bloodshed, earning her titles like the Female Caligula and the Bloody Mary of Madagascar. To maintain her grip on power, she unleashed a reign of terror through bizarre trials and brutal executions. Her favorite tool of justice? The Tangena ordeal, a deadly trial by poison. This traditional ordeal had existed in Madagascar for centuries, but Ranavalona wielded it on an unprecedented scale. Anyone accused of a crime, disloyalty, or even practicing Christianity could be forced to swallow the poisonous sap of the Tangena tree. The procedure was as strange as it was lethal. The accused had to eat 3 pieces of chicken skin along with the poison. If all 3 pieces were vomited back up, the person was deemed innocent. But if you failed to regurgitate every piece, or if the poison itself killed you, as it often did, you were declared guilty and executed. Not that the poison usually gave you a chance to survive in any case. In Ranavalona's Madagascar, trial and execution were often one and the same. The Tangena ordeal was mandatory for many accused, from alleged thieves to Christian converts. It's estimated that 20% to 50% of those subjected to Tangena died from the poison. In the late 1830s, as many as 100,000 people, about 1 in 5 of the population of the Central Highlands, perished from this ordeal alone. Every year of Ranavalona's rule, thousands drank the toxic draught, knowing it might be their last act. And death in Ranavalona's kingdom came in forms more monstrous than most could imagine. Poison was only the beginning. The queen's punishments were as creative as they were horrifying, designed not just to kill, but to send a message of power, of absolute fear. One day, 15 Christian peasants were dragged from their homes and bound tightly with ropes. They had refused to abandon their new faith, an act the queen viewed as treason. Without ceremony, they were marched to a jagged cliff near the royal palace. The drop? A sheer 150 feet into the rocks below. One by one, they were dangled over the edge, the ropes the only thing keeping them from death. When they still refused to renounce their god, the executioners cut the ropes. Screams tore through the air as the bodies plunged and shattered below. That cliff still stands. A cathedral now sits atop it, a quiet memorial to the blood once spilled there. But some deaths came even slower. One preacher, defiant and outspoken, declared that Christianity would one day free the enslaved. The queen's response was swift and cruel. He and his followers were captured and suspended upside down in a deep pit. Then, soldiers began pouring boiling water over their bodies, slowly, methodically, as if savoring the agony. Skin peeled. Voices cracked into silence. They were cooked alive. And as the steam rose, so too did a chilling message. No one defies the Queen and lives. Other stories, some whispered, some recorded, spoke of victims burned alive. In one ghastly tale, an infant was tossed into the flames as her parents screamed in chains. Ranavalona, it said, even fantasized about building enormous iron scissors, large enough to slice European invaders in half. The weapon never came to be, but the very fact that she envisioned such a device reveals the grotesque scope of her imagination. Pain wasn't enough, it had to be theatrical. And even when she didn't directly kill, her commands were death sentences. In 1845, Ranavalona ordered what was perhaps her most senseless act of cruelty, a grand royal buffalo hunt. Not a ceremonial gathering, but a full-blown expedition involving 50,000 people. Men, women, and children were forced to follow her into uncharted jungle, hacking roads through dense wilderness, building entire villages each time she stopped to rest. They carried supplies, constructed thrones, prepared camps, all under threat of punishment. For 4 brutal months, they marched. But no buffalo were ever caught. What they did catch was starvation, exhaustion, and tropical disease. By the time the hunt ended, an estimated 10,000 had died, their bodies left behind in the forest, swallowed by mud and vines, all for nothing more than the Queen's deadly whim. By the mid-1840s, Ranavalona's Madagascar had become a nightmare realm of fear. Estimates suggest that between war, famine, executions, and the Tangena trials, anywhere from 1 to 2.5 million people died during her 33-year reign. That is roughly 50% of the population wiped out by the Queen's policies. It's no wonder that even today, many Malagasy remember Ranavalona's era as the darkest period in their history. Yet, incredibly, through all the pain she caused, Ranavalona insisted she was protecting her nation. She saw foreigners, Christians, and rebels as existential threats. In her mind, Madagascar's independence justified any brutality. This twisted logic led her to turn the kingdom into a house of horrors, all in the name of sovereignty. Ranavalona's cruelty was not reserved only for her subjects. She was equally merciless against external enemies. In 1845, the outside world tested her wrath. Frustrated by Madagascar's closed borders and the Queen's harsh treatment of Christians, a joint force of French and British soldiers launched an expedition to intervene. They landed on the coast, hoping to overthrow or intimidate the Mad Queen. It was a fatal mistake. Ranavalona, armed with iron determination, and ironically, with cannons and guns made by European technicians she kept for their skills, met the invaders with ferocity. Disease and difficult terrain weakened the Europeans, and her warriors fiercely repelled the assault. The invading troops, unable to handle the guerrilla tactics and tropical conditions, retreated in disarray, suffering humiliating losses at the hands of a supposedly backward kingdom. But the Queen wasn't content to simply win the battle. She wanted to send a ghastly message. Her soldiers captured a number of French Marines who had been left behind in the chaos. In a spectacle of victory, Ranavalona ordered all the captured men executed. She then had 21 severed heads, skulls, of the dead invaders mounted on spikes along the beaches of Madagascar. Those grisly trophies stared out to sea as a warning to any other Europeans who dared to invade her realm. The message was unmistakable. Madagascar would remain sovereign over her dead body, or over yours. This triumph against foreign forces made Ranavalona feel invincible. By the 1850s, she had succeeded in keeping Madagascar independent, while much of Africa fell to colonialism. But her violent methods earned her infamy abroad and growing hatred at home. Even her only son, Prince Rakoto became horrified by her brutality. The prince was sympathetic to the modern ideas his father, Ranavalona, had embraced, and he secretly yearned to end his mother's bloody practices. As famine and fear gripped the land, plots began to form against the queen from within her own court. In 1857, after nearly 30 years of terror, a bold conspiracy emerged. Prince Rakoto joined with a French adventurer named Joseph-François Lambert in a plan to overthrow Ranavalona. They secured promises of support from foreign backers in exchange for future trade concessions. The stage was set for a coup to free Madagascar from the tyrant queen. But Ranavalona was always one step ahead. Her network of informants had fed her details of the plot from the start. Rather than quash it immediately, the cunning queen let the conspirators believe they were safe, right up until the moment she chose to strike. When Prince Rakoto and his allies finally moved to execute their coup, Ranavalona sprung her trap. She arrested every conspirator in the palace before they could act. Lambert, the Frenchman, barely managed to flee the island with his life. As for those captured, the queen showed a glimmer of twisted maternal mercy. She spared her son Rakoto from execution, perhaps because he was the last link to her late husband. Similarly, she spared her favorite French technician, Jean Laborde, who had unwittingly been dragged into the plot, choosing to exile him instead. But everyone else involved faced a slow death. Ranavalona ordered the traitors to undergo a death march through malaria-infested swamps as punishment. Chained and forced to march for weeks in deadly conditions, most of the rebels perished from illness and exhaustion long before reaching any destination. The coup had failed disastrously, and the cruel queen had once again crushed her enemies utterly. By this point, Ranavalona I had no serious threats left. She had outlived or destroyed all opponents, foreign or domestic. Incredibly, this blood-soaked ruler died peacefully in her sleep in August 1861, denying her countless victims even the solace that fate had caught up to her. Upon her death, the Madagascar she left behind was battered and depopulated. When the news spread, it said there was rejoicing among the populace, who felt a long nightmare was finally over. Ironically, even her funeral was touched by violence. A stray barrel of gunpowder exploded during the ceremonies, killing several bystanders. It was as if the violent spirit of her reign refused to go quietly. Queen Ranavalona I's legacy is a complex and controversial one. On one hand, she is rightly remembered as one of history's cruelest rulers, a queen who mercilessly tortured and killed to preserve her power. Her reign saw unprecedented suffering, a true reign of terror that earned her a place among the most bloodthirsty figures of the 19th century. Even in Madagascar today, many recall her rule as a time of horror, the darkest years the island ever endured. The key takeaway is stark. Absolute power, driven by fear and isolationism, can lead to unimaginable atrocities. Ranavallona's story stands as a cautionary tale of how a leader's paranoia and brutality can devastate a nation. Yet on the other hand, some have pointed out that Ranavalona achieved something remarkable. She kept Madagascar free from European colonization during her lifetime. Her fanatic commitment to sovereignty delayed the French conquest of Madagascar by several decades. In the context of her era, when colonial powers brutalized much of Africa, Ranavalona's fierce resistance can be seen as tragically extreme patriotism. It raises uncomfortable questions. Was there a justification for her ferocity, knowing the brutality colonizers would bring? How far is too far when defending your homeland's independence? History doesn't offer easy answers. What we do know is that Ranavalona's methods were horrifically excessive by any measure. She safeguarded her throne, but at the cost of her people's lives and welfare. In the end, Madagascar fell to the French a generation after her death, rendering all her cruelty ultimately futile. Queen Ranavalona I remains a figure of morbid fascination, a ruler who became the terror of her own people. Her story forces us to confront the capacity for evil in the pursuit of power, and it reminds us why good governance and accountability are so precious. Learning about her reign can positively impact us today by underscoring the importance of compassion and human rights, and the dangers of isolation and tyranny. If we remember the Mad Queen of Madagascar, we are better equipped to spot and stop the red flags of authoritarian cruelty in our own time. Thank you for watching this dark journey through history. If you found this story eye-opening, don't forget to hit the like button and share your thoughts in the comments. We have many more fascinating and sometimes chilling history tales to share. So subscribe to the channel and ring the notification bell so you won't miss our next video. Stay curious, stay informed, and we'll see you in the next one. Until then, remember, those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. Subscribe and join us for more incredible stories.